It's the most nerve-wracking time of the year, with seasonal depression and financial stress. And Merry holidays, everyone. Happy birthday to Santa Jesus, and I hope you're all having a festive season, unless you are Kanye West, in which case, que un fick dich. Typically in the spirit of the Halloween and Christmas seasons, respectively, my family likes to try and fill out the entire month with a movie each night. Back on Halloween, I hit you with 10 of my favorite obscure horror movies to watch during that time, and my original intent for this list was to go big for Christmas and bring you my favorite 25 movies during the holiday season. But what I discovered is that most of the back half of this list was full of movies that I do enjoy, but that I just didn't care to spend a bunch of time talking about, and so I decided to trim it up to a nice even 15. 15's not even. Anyway, maybe, just maybe, I'll find a way to make up those other 10 entries somewhere else. Now, as I stated in the title, this is just a list of movies that I like to watch during the holiday season. The majority of them are traditionally thought of as Christmas movies, but to me, that term can apply to any movie that brings you that special feeling that only Christmas can bring, and so if you associate it with the holiday, then that's good enough for me. And so you will see some on here that are not thought of as Christmas movies to probably anyone but me. But it's my list. Make your own. Do it down there, and we could talk about them together. That would be fun, wouldn't it? Real quick, as a disclaimer, let's get this out of the way. I fully acknowledge that movies like Miracle on 34th Street and It's a Wonderful Life are timeless classics, and if they are on your list, I totally get it, but I would be lying to you if I included them on this list and said that I watched them around Christmas. Because I don't, and so they're not on here. Same thing for A Christmas Story. I just had my fill of this movie with it being the only thing we were allowed to watch on Christmas Day at my grandma's house growing up, and I've just outgrown it to ever pick it up and actively watch it, so it's not here either. But let's nut crack on with the first entry, number 15, which is the only horror movie on this list as well, and that is Black Christmas, the 1974 version, not either of those god-awful remakes. I didn't discover this movie until later in life, which is unfortunate because I think this would have been in my rotation growing up, but it's basically about a sorority house that receives harassing and increasingly disturbing phone calls by an unknown person who eventually invades the house itself and begins taking these girls out one by one. By today's standards, this movie might be considered a bit too boring since it's not a gore fest with a ton of jump scares, but if you allow yourself to be pulled into this movie, it is really great at building tension, especially through the first person views from the killer's POV. And this is actually a really creepy movie that was some of the inspiration for the slasher movie craze that began with the original Halloween. The phone calls and especially the reveal are seriously unnerving. It's also got some great comedic moments from No Filter Drunk Barb to Mrs. Mack, the sorority mom, and it's even got the great John Saxon, who would star as a cop in some other famous horror movies that are just my favorite of all time, no big deal. Anyway, if you've never given it a chance, you definitely should. Next up at 14 is a movie I don't see get a lot of mentions on favorite holiday movie lists, and that is The Night Before. This movie is basically the story of a young man named Ethan, played by Joseph Gordon-Levitt, who loses both of his parents tragically shortly before Christmas, and then begins a tradition of spending Christmas Eve getting fucked up with his friends, played by Seth Rogen and Anthony Mackie, so that he won't ever spend the holiday alone. As they begin to get older and drift apart, though, they agree to meet up for one last hurrah and look to finally get into this massive secret yearly party that they've been trying to get into for years. This movie is obvious, goofy stoner comedy at several points, but there are some real touching moments in this movie, and for anyone who has had traditions with friends that have had to end just due to life getting real, this movie will speak to you on that level. Grief and loss and moving on are big themes in this also, and for anyone who has lost people close to them, the holidays can open up those wounds again, and so this movie addressing that is just nice to see as well. This is also a genuinely funny movie that is just a bit different than what you normally expect from a holiday comedy, and everyone in it is really great. Oh, and the runaway scene is amazing, not only because I do love that song, but also because the lyrics sure carry more weight and deserve some examining considering recent events with Mr. West. Anyway, give this one a look if you've never seen it. So this next one is likely a holiday movie to probably no one but me, but 13 is going to be Catch Me If You Can. Now, hear me out. First of all, the first time I saw this movie was over my Christmas break from school, and so that plays a bit of a factor in its holidayness to me. But also major events of this movie are centered around Christmas time as well, as our two main characters have a string of occurrences that always seem to bring them together at Christmas.
Merry Christmas! How is it that we're always talking on Christmas, Paul?
Apart from that though, I will admit this has nothing to do with the holiday itself. This is just for me, and it's my list, so if you don't like it, suck my North Pole. I will say though that I do love this movie and I plan to eventually do a real story on it, and the stuff I have found looking into it just briefly is fascinating, so I won't linger on this one too long, but give it a watch this year if you feel so inclined and see if it doesn't feel like a holiday movie after doing so. Number 12, another one that probably most people wouldn't consider a Christmas movie, but it is at least for me, and that is Just Friends. I absolutely adore this movie, and even though the story of someone's holiday plans falling through and them ending up somewhere they don't want to be has been done to death, I think for most people like me that weren't exactly Mr. Popular in high school, there is an ability to live vicariously through this movie when it comes to the idea of coming back to the town you grew up in over a Christmas holiday after you've spent years away doing the ultimate glow up and then going on a victory lap. Ryan Reynolds is vintage Ryan Reynolds in this before he became a bit too Ryan Reynolds, if that makes sense. But I will never not laugh at him singing I Swear in the mirror.
I swear by the moon and the stars in the sky.
I also like Chris Klein's character of Dusty, who gets involved and starts to act as a roadblock for Ryan Reynolds' character to get out of the friend zone and ultimately serves as a solid antagonist. Anna Faris is who really steals every moment that she is in, though, with her hysterical interactions and mannerisms.
I'm busy!
I'm busy, stupid dick!
And the way they pair her with the little brother, played by a seriously underrated actor in my opinion, and Chris Marquette, makes for some great spots too. This is just a movie that makes me feel good when I watch it, which is why it's a holiday favorite and why it lands here on this list. Coming in at number 11, we're making a stop in the hood with Friday After Next.
What the hell you doing in my house? Eating a big ass sandwich and shit.
Nigga, I'm Santa Claus. What the fuck, the milk and cookies?
So as far as the Friday trilogy, this is far and away the weakest of the bunch, and you can tell at moments that Ice Cube is trying a bit too hard with the joke writing, but it's still got some hilarious moments, and as far as holiday movies, this is a solid entry.
Nobody got meat, pussy, whip, pie. Whips, pussy.
Give me the watch. Give me the watch.
No, not the rolling.
Nah, it's a stolen. Give me the watch.
This is one of those that rather than being an out-and-out Christmas movie, this is a franchise that decided to do a Christmas-themed version of its movies, and much like when a horror franchise decides to go to space, this is always a tricky proposition that doesn't have a high success rate, but this movie also gave us the legendary characters of Damon and Money Mike, and so I can overlook a lot of the stuff that doesn't land because these two are fucking great.
Yo, homie, you ever been to the pen?
Hell no. Thanks for asking. I want everybody back. There's gonna be ball juice everywhere.
Everybody get back in the house.
There's also this really intriguing moment when Day Day is questioning his cousin's role in his life and the way it's been influenced ever since they've been prevalent in each other's lives. It's not really explored more than just this brief conversation that they have, which I think was a huge missed opportunity, and I think they should have still been evicted and it would have just ended with the two of them going their separate ways. But I guess Cube likes happy endings. Getting into the top 10 is going to be an under-the-radar dark comedy from the early 90s called The Ref. Dennis Leary plays a burglar who, while waiting out a manhunt for him after a botched robbery attempt, decides to take a couple hostage and use their home to lay low, but gets way more than he bargained for, as this turns out to be one of the most dysfunctional families of all time. In an effort to avoid being caught, he ends up forced to play a marriage counselor and help these people work through all of their issues, while at the same time planning his escape and trying to keep from losing his shit constantly. Between the dynamic of the main couple, played by Kevin Spacey and Judy Davis, constantly bickering back and forth, their smart, conniving son, who's been doing his own bit of bad behavior, and the remainder of the relatives and townsfolk that get involved, especially the mother-in-law, I mean, this movie just has some seriously funny moments in it.
You know, lady, I'd like to tie you to the back of a fucking truck.
You don't have the balls.
No. When I get it.
Don't. It's not worth it.
You think you can take me? I'm Santa Claus.
I remember watching this when I was younger, and then it fell off my radar, unfortunately, for several years. But when I came back to it, I just re-fell in love with it, and it's since had its place among my top 10. Okay, this one might get me into a bit of trouble for it being so low, but number 9 is going to be Elf. Full disclosure, I have never been a huge fan of this movie. In fact, I think it really only succeeds on the strength of Will Ferrell's ability to subtly weave little differences into his iconic characters. He did the same thing with movies like Blades of Glory and Semi-Pro. But personally, I think without Will Ferrell, this movie would have suffered the same fate of those like Fred Claus. But the difference was that that movie was plagued by Vince Vaughn doing his standard thing he did back in the day of talking quickly about getting hopped up and making bad decisions. You know, the same character he basically played in every movie in the early 2000s.
You gotta worry about some art student who's hyperactive, who's all hopped up on medications. You might try to shank the little guy.
Just really wondering, are we gonna get hopped up enough to make some bad decisions?
Which, don't get me wrong, I was all there for, but sort of like a Dane Cook stand-up, it lost its luster as I matured a bit.
Jackass.
I will say, since he has branched out and done some other really impressive things like Brawl and Cell Block 99, which if you haven't seen it, you need to because it's fantastic, I can honestly now go back and enjoy a movie like Fred Claus again. But enough about that though, let's get back to Elf. I do understand why this movie is higher on some people's lists. I think the disconnect for me, though, is after seeing Will Ferrell in so many good, hard, R-rated comedies of the time, it's a bit strange seeing him go back into a more family-friendly role, and I keep waiting for the Ferrell that I'm used to.
Suck my cock! I'll murder your family!
I also think this is my least favorite Zooey Deschanel anything, even though she basically essentially plays slightly different versions of the same character in everything she does too. I promise, I do enjoy this movie, as much as it just sounds like I might just be shitting on it. It does have some great lines in it, and it birthed the legend that is Elf Spaghetti. It's just that when it comes to the heavy hitters of annual Christmas movies, this is the one that I'm probably grabbing last. Next up at number 8, we have the newest kid on the block, and that is going to be Noelle. This came out in 2019, and it's another version of the Someone Succeeds Santa Claus to become the new one storyline that we've seen before. But when it comes to holiday movies, predictability isn't necessarily a bad thing, and this take on that story is a really fun and heartwarming good time. Anna Kendrick, Bill Hader, and Billy Eichner are all so great at their roles as members of the Kringle family, and I personally love movies that tackle the logistical difficulties of the idea of Santa actually existing and seeing what they come up with to solve those. Like, for instance, the fact that he speaks every language and just knows instinctively who is naughty or nice. This movie also has my favorite rendition that we see of the North Pole that I can ever remember seeing in a movie. There's some really nice father and son bonding stuff, which always gets me, and I believe this is another of Disney's ways of telling us that traditions change and evolve, and even though it isn't how we always remembered it, it's okay, because ultimately, it's about a character who doesn't really exist in real life. And the great thing about that is, they can be anything you want to be. Is that too heavy-handed? Also, Snowcone is just the cutest thing ever. Oh, who's a good little baby reindeer? Anyway, check this one out if you haven't seen it, it's really good. Ah yes, the one that started the whole is it a Christmas movie debate. And it is, it just is. If you're still arguing against it at this point, what are you doing with your life? You've lost. And that is going to be Die Hard. The story of NYC police officer John McClane defeating a group of German terrorists and saving his family on Christmas Eve at the Nakatomi Plaza has become part of Christmas lore, and the entire holiday is better for it, damn it. To be honest, as far as just movies are concerned, when compared to the other movies on this list, this would probably be sitting comfortably in the top 3. But this list is the ones that I tend to watch during the holidays, and to be honest, ever since I've had kids, during the holidays has always been a busy time, and so I don't have as many opportunities to watch it at this point in my life, so that's why it's a bit lower. It is a perfect action film though, and there is no other Christmas movie like it, outside of maybe Santa with muscles. But Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman bring to life one of the greatest hero-villain combos ever conceived, and this is an endlessly quotable movie.
Attention, whoever you are. This channel is reserved for emergency calls only.
No fucking shit, lady! Do I sound like I'm ordering a pizza?
Hey,
So I will put my stamp on this debate once and for all that this is a Christmas movie. And it's number 7 on this list. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Christmas Vacation. This is my favorite of the Vacation series, but to be honest, I haven't watched the original since I was much younger, and that is on my to-do list over the rest of the holiday break, so we'll see if that changes. I understand that this is basically the same idea as the original, and that our main character has the perfect idea of how something is supposed to go, in this case the perfect Christmas holiday, and then anything that can go wrong does go wrong, and it just turns into a giant clusterfuck. For whatever reason though, this version of it has always stuck with me more, and I've watched this one vastly more over the years. The tie-together storyline of the Christmas bonus and how Clark's entire ideal holiday is really propped up on this one thing turning out okay, and him being able to try and let all these other things that are going awry sort of ride off is super relatable, and it just becomes more so every year as we drift into Capitalismus.
Oh, groovy, smashing, yay capitalism!
This is also sort of the benchmark dealing with the relatives during the holidays movie, and in my opinion, it has the most quotable lines of any of the vacation movies.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Kiss my ass. Kiss his ass. Kiss your ass. Happy Hanukkah.
Merry Christmas! Dinner was full!
And who doesn't love that intro song? Whatever your feelings about Chevy Chase the person, I do love the character of Clark Griswold, and this is where I think personally Cousin Eddie shines the most with the comedic timing and his delivery. I also personally like to think that maybe, just maybe, we're seeing one of the other ends of A Christmas Story, and Eddie is somehow the ghost of Christmas future. The less said about that abomination of a sequel, though, the better. Number 5 is going to be The Santa Claus. So as far as all of the movies on this list, this is the one that I have the most complicated relationship with. On the one hand, I still have a lot of nostalgic love for this movie, and it has lines that still make me laugh to this day. And it's got the whole father-son bonding thing. No, I clearly don't have unresolved daddy issues.
Daddy!
On the other hand, though, it's got Tim Allen in it, and Tim has sort of become like leftover IHOP that's been in the backseat of your car for 3 weeks. It might have once been good, but in reality, it was probably always bad for you, and now it's just trash. Truth be told, though, this movie, and also Jungle to Jungle, will probably always have a certain place in my heart, though, for the kid in me who's always loved them. The concept of the Santa Claus, a career-centered and somewhat absentee father unknowingly accepting a contract to become the next Santa when the current one falls off his roof, was genius for its time, and this also deals with some heavy stuff in terms of children of broken homes and the splitting of holidays and custody type things that I can't recall seeing in a lot of Christmas movies. Be careful watching this one with your kids, though, if they still believe, because they aren't exactly subtle about it, and it might leave some questions that you aren't ready to answer quite yet. I have yet to check out any of the new series on Disney Plus, and that is on my list of things to watch, and hopefully that might bring me all the way back into it. It's still a favorite of mine, though, and it always seems to find its yearly spot around the holidays. Now we are getting into the heavy hitters of the holiday movies, and at number 4 is going to be Jingle All the Way. For a time when I was a bit younger, actually, this movie occupied my top spot. I absolutely have always loved it. The story of a somewhat absentee father, always the absentee fathers, what the hell? Anyway, he wants to do something big for his son for Christmas and promises him that Santa will bring him the hit toy of that holiday season, Turbo Man, but severely underestimates the difficulties that go along with securing it. It's such a simple story, but it's done to near perfection in this. Everyone in this is fantastic, from Arnold to Sinbad to Phil Hartman's Ted to little Annie Skywalker. The back and forth between Sinbad and Arnold never gets old, even though I will admit I will forever be intrigued at the original choice for Myron, which was allegedly Joe Pesci, and what that would have looked like.
Don't fuck with me, Al. Don't make a fuck out of me.
Also, some of the final scenes may not have aged well in terms of CGI, but this is one of Arnold's most quotable movies when he isn't taking a life.
Oh, I can run like this for miles. Dasher, Dancer, Prancer, Vixen, Comet, Cupid, Donner, Blitzen. I'm not a pervert. I just was looking for Turbo Man doll. Put that cookie down now.
This does deal a bit with the commercialism of Christmas, but it does it in a more tongue-in-cheek manner rather than an out-and-out condescending one, since it's revolving around the madness of it toy shopping, and it does a fantastic job of capturing that madness of Christmas Eve last-minute bustle. And it's a nice trim hour and 20 minutes too, so it doesn't linger around too long like an annoying relative. Again, never saw the sequel, don't care to, but if they could get Arnie back for another one of these where he is basically grandpaing around the new reality of what holiday shopping has become, I'm game. At number 3 is going to be Home Alone 2. When I was younger, this was actually my preferred Home Alone movie, but as I've gotten older, I have grown to appreciate the original a bit more, spoiler alert. And the funny thing is, the reasons that I originally liked the sequel better are some of the reasons that it's lower than the original as an adult. It's a bigger, more expensive, more outlandish version of the original, and in some ways that really works to its advantage. Like the opening bit of this movie with the Christmas program and all, I actually prefer that to the original opening. I do love the New York setting and the idea of him getting lost there. All the stuff with the Plaza Hotel scenes are great, and who doesn't fucking love Tim Curry?
I love you.
But where it veers a bit for me as an adult is during that third act showdown with Harry and Marv. Now, I do understand that to a degree there was no choice but to go bigger with all the traps and all that stuff, but whereas even in the first movie the things that the two endured would likely still have landed them in the hospital or dead, in this one these two are basically superhuman in the amounts of damage that they withstand and keep coming. Marv leans a little bit too heavy into the idiocy of his character in this one too, whereas I feel like in the first one the proportion of his goofiness was a little bit better mixed. Also, while I do like this movie's version of the adult character who is seemingly scary at first but ends up having a heart-to-heart with and eventually helping to save Kevin, I do think it's just done better in the original. At the end of the day though, this is still one of my favorite all-time movies and it pairs perfectly with the first movie. Coming in at number 2 is going to be the 2000 version of The Grinch. This is the one that has climbed the most in recent years because even though I did like this movie a lot when it came out, it has just become more and more and more of a favorite of mine. I do like the cartoon versions as well, but Jim Carrey just brings this character literally and metaphorically to life, and he brings his goofiness and off-the-wallness that he is known for and just marries it to this classic story and makes it better in every way.
Now pucker up and kiss it, Who Bill!
Danger!
Introducing the Grinch's origin story and all the characters that come along with it, like the mayor and Martha May, was exactly the direction that they should have gone in, while also leaning heavier into the intended message of the original Grinch of Christmas being more than just about material items. I think the way that they tied these things together was just very smart, and when you pair it with all the perfectly cast roles, you have a classic that just keeps getting better with every viewing. Where Are You Christmas is also a really sweet song, and Taylor Momsen, who played Cindy Lou Who, ended up retiring from acting and is now the lead singer of a rock band, so that's just a fun FYI. Jim Carrey's version of the classic Mr. Grinch song always puts a smile on my face as well, as he just brings it in every way. I've come to find that there is a surprising number of people who don't like this movie, and to that I say, I guess you're entitled to your wrong opinion. And by process of elimination, I am sure that you have figured out by now that at the tippity of this list is going to be the original Home Alone. I think all kids who were growing up at the time period that this came out at some point have tried to engineer our own Kevin McAllister booby trap and believed in our minds that left at home to our own devices we would be able to pull off the same defense job of turning the entire house into a nightmare playland of violence and slowly beating two home invaders into submission, all while of course making sure to do the grocery shopping and the wash. But this is the quintessential holiday movie, at least to me, and everything about it works. Like I mentioned earlier, I've just gravitated towards this one more over the sequel in my adult years for a few reasons. Firstly, just because most of the classic Home Alone stuff that you remember from the franchise actually happens in this movie.
Keep the change, you filthy animal.
So once that sort of sticks in your head, you appreciate it more. I also understand that as far as realism is concerned, all of the movies in this franchise are really reaching.
Shut up!
But this is the one that at least feels closest to something that could happen for me. When you realize, though, that Joe Pesci was fresh from coming off his terrifying role in Goodfellas, the funnier this gets, and sometimes I like to watch Home Alone after Goodfellas just to really soak that in. I also think there was some serious money that could have been made with a movie about Harry and Marv getting out and coming after Kevin as an adult, and you give it a hard R rating, but it's about 15 years too late, I'd reckon. I also mentioned earlier about the conversation he has with Old Man Marley, and as an adult you just really feel that and how it relates to Kevin wishing his family away earlier in the movie. Every time I see this, though, I am more convinced that he is just playing into terrifying the kids for a laugh. I mean, come on, how do you explain this? Anyway, this movie launched Macaulay Culkin's career, and another awesome thing, if you haven't seen it, is the Drivers episode on YouTube featuring him reprising his role as an adult Kevin McAllister. It is truly hilarious. This is usually near the top of most people's lists, and I believe it would take a truly seismic movie to knock this one off its perch as my favorite holiday movie of all time. Well, there you have it, my 15 favorite holiday movies. What did you think? Hopefully maybe you rediscovered an old favorite, or possibly even a new contender will enter your rotation. Let me know your favorites down below, and if you enjoyed the video, please do all of the things to all of the buttons. Keep your eyes peeled. I hope to be back very, very soon with some more. But until then, thank you very much for watching as always. Be safe and be happy, and everyone have a Merry Christmas. Hopefully maybe you rediscovered an old holiday or an old holiday.